let's go, guys. La Verdad Sin Filtro podcast. Once more, we're back.
We're here.
We like always, like every day, every time we're on, I'm here with Pastor Misa de la Costa. Yes. Ronald Urquiza. And once again, this is the second podcast that you're in.
Yep.
Pastor Thomas.
Yes.
God bless you. Yes.
Honored to be here with you guys.
Very excited to meet you.
Yes, absolutely.
and
Pastor, your beautiful wife as well.
Thank you.
Can you present who you have with you?
So this is the beautiful, lovely, illustrious, amazing, gorgeous,
Oh God.
Pocahontas looking.
Oh my God.
I'm John Smith. No.
You'll be blessed tonight.
You ain't white.
He'll be blessed tonight.
My beautiful wife, Almarie, Pastor Almarie.
Pastora Almarie.
Thank you guys.
Welcome to La Verdad Sin Filtro podcast. Well, this is the Red Flag series. We did one before with Pastor Angel and his wife Castro.
Yes.
And it was a blessing. It was red flags before marriage.
Right.
That's good, yeah.
And that was
Yo estaba ahí.
Right.
We
And,
sent our love to them. We love
Yes.
them.
Yes. And today we have red flags about ministers. How can we tell when there's a sus minister, meaning suspicious minister? So I think that everybody, the Bible says that wanting to be in a place of ministry is not bad, right? El que desea obispado, ¿verdad? Anhela algo bueno.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it says.
Right.
Buenas cosas desea. So meaning desiring it is good.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there's steps to take.
Yeah. Del deseo al llamado son dos cosas diferentes.
Yes.
Right.
You know, from the desire to the calling. You can have the desire and not be truly called for it. And if you're not called, you're not equipped. Right? Only the called are equipped.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's
We're starting already.
Wow.
Let's go.
Se acabó el podcast. Ya, se
Dios
acabó.
mío.
So
Cancelen. Apaga las luces.
can
Wow. Can you wait?
yeah, you gotta say.
Elabora un poquito en eso.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
Okay, so muchas veces tenemos mucha gente que desean un llamado, pero son pocos los que verdaderamente son llamados al llamado. O sea, por eso es que le decimos un llamado, porque fuiste llamado y escogido por el Padre Celestial. Y muchas veces tenemos, yo creo que ahora mismo tenemos como una moda dentro de la iglesia que se ha levantado. It's like kind of like you go from one level, okay, I'll be an evangelist, and once I'm done being an evangelist, you know, my next promotion is to be a pastor, and then my next promotion is to be an evangelist to the nations, and then my next promotion is to be an apostle, but you never really see the succession of them being called from one place to the other. And that's a huge red flag, because when you're called, you feel the burden of it. Tú sientes lo... You know, that burden of like, I'm being called to people, like to lead people, to love on people. For example, I remember when Thomas and I, when we first met and we were dating, I knew I wanted to be a pastor. And Pastor Thomas thought he was going to be the black Garth Brooks, traveling everywhere, singing with a guitar.
Listen, where's my camera? The black Chris Tomlin, okay? Garth Brooks. Country? What?
Yeah, él quería estar por todos los lados cantando con una guitarra, like that. You know, eso es lo de adorador. Pero yo veía en él algo más y que mientras más lloraba, I felt God saying, like, you know, el llamado es de un pastor, pero he's running from it. And I remember one day, in the pastor's office, yo lo pillé.
No, you gotta do this right. Because what we did was we had said, look, we want to like get married. This is our thought process. Could you give us counseling? And the counseling was, Thomas, you're gonna be a pastor. Stop playing. Like, that's literally how it went in the office, man. I was like, I thought we were here to like talk about.
What's my options?
You guys.
Yeah, he thought he was gonna get warned about the type of woman he was marrying.
Yeah, no, nobody told me. No, he's not. But it's true that in the English church we said, you know, some people are sent and others just went.
Yes.
And that's the truth. Like there are people who unfortunately, and this is like that's probably one of the biggest ones that you can if you're an up-and-coming minister and you want to get into ministry, like you desire ministry. Number one, desiring ministry is to serve. The word minister means serve. That's why that verse, I think Mark 16:45, where it says, the Son of Man did not come to, or Mark 10:45, the Son of Man did not come to minister, to be ministered to, but to minister. In the newer translations, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. That word minister means serve.
Right.
So if you're in ministry because you see the platform, and you see the microphone, and you see the lights, and you see elevation worship, and you see Mike Todd, like if you're on that,
That's what
don't
you
get
want,
into
yeah.
ministry.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something, that's like the iceberg.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
10% of the iceberg is above the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But the Titanic didn't crash because of what they saw. It crashed because of what was below the surface.
Correct.
Correct.
And many ministers, they get destroyed because de la cosa que no se ven.
Yeah.
La cosa que están, esos son los problemas. Vienen de allí, de la cosa que no se ve. You can't see it, that's what knocks you out.
And I think that one of the biggest red flags that we see in ministers is, okay, you just came in, you accepted Jesus Christ, and the next day you're already an evangelist. Like, what happened with the process?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest red flags. Not going through a process is not only a red flag, but it's something that we all need to go through.
It doesn't allow them to build character.
Character, yes.
And the anointing can take you, but the character maintains you.
Yeah, that's
You know, the characters was going to allow you to have the longevity in ministry, because ministry isn't just going from altar to altar. You know, that's
good.
that's the public side of it. But the private side of ministry it can be very hurtful and damaging. And it's, a lot of times it can be very depressing. And if you don't have the character and you're not firmly cemented upon the rock that is Christ, and your real motive isn't to serve Christ and his people that you've been called to, you will get a real slap in the face
awakening.
of like
and that's what we see nowadays. A lot of these so-called, I don't want to say so-called, but evangelists that from one day to another they became these big preachers without being formed well, not being processed correctly. And then we see that a hiccup comes in the ministry, and then they're out.
Not even a hiccup. Now they're explosive. It's kind of like, unfortunately, what's happened to some of these big time pastors, that their fame got to them, but pride comes before the fall.
Yes.
And then when your fall comes, it's so big, and it can be very detrimental to like the thousands of young up and coming ministers that look up to you like, mira, yo quiero ser como eso, como el otro. Pero es el carácter que debemos de,
Yo tengo una pregunta. ¿Ustedes piensan que existe como un desnivel en predicadores, evangelistas, quien sea, como que se aferran mucho a los dones, pero hay poco fruto?
Yeah.
Elaboren acerca de eso.
No, I think the problem is, we love the ability to speak, because at the end of the day, let's talk about it. Like, that's what really preaching is. And I'm not putting the ministry of preaching less than what it is, right? It is literally speaking. T.D. Jakes has a book out, Don't Drop the Mic, awesome
Right.
book, and he talks about how to formulate. Like, there is a particular way. There's an art to preaching. Let's just talk about it. There's an art to preaching. So you could be a great preacher, but not be producing any fruit, right? And so you could be really good on the altar, but when you get off the altar, right? And I know you guys were talking about this on the red flags in marriage podcast, but a lot of that, you could be awesome on the altar, but then you get off the altar and then your home is a wreck. Like your marriage with your wife is a wreck. Like, and let's talk about it. If you're preaching up there, but there's no fruit in your marriage, I'm sorry, you can't stand on my altar.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, everybody goes through what they go through, and I get it, but if there's no fruit, right, of the Spirit, there's no love, joy, peace. Like, if that stuff is not happening off the altar, I don't care what you got to say.
And I think that's one of the requirements, right? In that verse, in that chapter.
Oh, yeah.
If you can't govern your house, how are you going to govern what God, puts in you? And that's another thing too. Another red flag that I see now in days. And I just want to mention this. There's a lot of young people coming up that want to do ministry, and I pray that you guys do get into ministry, but follow the mentors.
Yeah.
We need to have good mentors.
But I think we need to have more mentorship programs.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that the Holy Spirit kept pressing me to start, which was a mentorship program for women in ministry to teach them how to operate healthy in ministry, how to operate in the prophetic gifting in a healthy way, because there's no accountability in the kingdom anymore.
Accountability, yes.
Wow.
And if we don't have any accountability, we don't have anyone that can mentor us and tell us, mira, tú no estás haciendo las cosas bien, te tienes que cerrar la agenda por un tiempo.
Yep.
That's right.
La gente se enoja si tú le dices eso.
Oh, yeah, la gente se enoja y ellos creen que tú le...
Tú estás menospreciando. Like, no, we're not underappreciating anything. You are going to damage. Like, we were just talking, like, we know ministers that are bleeding on people.
Yeah. Not only that, we know, like, I help so many women, y yo conozco muchas pastoras que en el público tú las ves y están junto a sus maridos, y los maridos Dios los usa poderosamente y vienen a mí, y el pastor Thomas te lo puede decir, que vienen a mi casa llorando, mi esposo, que Dios lo usa proféticamente en sanidades, me pega.
Yeah.
Wow.
Y la iglesia lo sabe y no dice nada porque tienen miedo. So I've dealt with that many times, and there's no one to make them accountable. And if there are people, it's just like, bueno, yo no me meto en esos asuntos. Eso es algo cultural de ellos. And it's like, no, señores, eso no es algo cultural. Like, come on now.
Pero ese es el problema, porque y yo digo eso muchas veces, que los judíos no hay diferencia entre su cultura y su fe. Es lo mismo. Pero con nosotros como cristianos, yo soy cristiano, pero también soy afroamericano. También ella es boricua. Lo que sea, right? Like, mi cristianismo es diferente. Like, my Christianity is different from who I am culturally. And the problem with that is when I don't allow my faith to invade my personal culture, there are areas of my life that my culture affects that Christ can never affect. And if he isn't Lord of all, he isn't Lord at all.
That's right.
Wow.
I like that.
I love that.
Like that. ¿Ustedes creen que es posible que un predicador se instale, se inicie como la voz de Dios aquí en la tierra y no sepa de la Biblia?
No.
That's another red flag.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Ese es red flag número uno,
That's
yo
like,
creo.
listen, you can't preach it.
Man.
Pues todos estos predicadores leen la Biblia y de la Biblia no hablan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
La Biblia también nos dice that, que tenemos que predicar no solamente de la palabra, pero en su contexto. Y tenemos mucha gente que saben varios versículos, pero no saben el contexto en el cual algo está siendo predicado. Y están envolviendo a la gente en dogmas que son unas idioteces.
And it causes more harm.
Yeah, it does cause more harm because you're telling people something that's probably is no longer in effect. That's no longer in effect because we're now under a different dispensation of grace or whatever, or because Paul was probably right, or because maybe Paul was writing to that church because of what they were going through, but because we don't study it, we decide to just take just one verse and correr con ese versículo.
And I think one of the ways to confront that is us, people that are in leadership, that are in the pastors, and I'm talking to the pastors now, we have to stop being enablers to ministers that come from that, We all know when you hear somebody try to express something or preach something, I hope that you guys understand, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, he doesn't have it.
He doesn't have it.
Right.
You get me? We have to stop being an enabler and say, "Oh, I'm gonna take you. We're doing a campaña 3 days, and I want you to preach all 3 days."
Let me say
The issue, hold on. The issue is sometimes is that as a pastor, I think that very early on in our ministry, we try not to do that, but we found ourselves getting into that sticky situation, and it's because a lot of times as a pastor, you have the heart of seeing God's potential in everyone.
Yep.
And the moment you see God's potential,
No, go ahead. I told you. I told you.
That's good.
Explícame eso,
No,
mi
pero
amor.
yo le dije la última vez que estaba aquí. Suelta.
O sea, tú estás diciendo que a veces nosotros tenemos tanta misericordia en ver el potencial de las personas que
Yeah,
al
vemos
fin y
el-
al cabo nunca se desarrolla.
nunca se desarrolla porque siempre estamos, ay bendito, no le digan nada, es el potencial, no lo queremos. No queremos herirle los sentimientos, no queremos, demos otra oportunidad. Y
That's
nunca
enabling.
Yes,
Hello.
pero nunca llegamos porque muchas veces como pastores somos tan padres espirituales que no sabemos hacer pastores, que cuidan, pero a la misma vez that they take the other side of the stuff and like, no, I gotta put you back in line,
And my wife and I always tell this story because I think when we understand like people development, this is important. Like when we look at each other, we have to look at each other and see each other as God sees us. Bible says that God sees the end from the beginning, right?
Right.
So when God looks at you, he doesn't look at you as you are right now. He looks at you as you are in eternity, standing before him when he says, well done. And that person is very different from the person that you are now. My wife and I, we went to the Bahamas to marry a good pair of friends of ours. And literally, we were walking through one of the little areas, and there was a guy with he was carving, like, he had little wooden carvings, and he was in the process of carving like a fish. And you could see, like, it was a big block of wood, and probably the front, that much of it was complete, like about that much. Sorry, I'll be moving. That much of it was complete. And the rest of it was like that. And it was just like, it looked ugly, it looked nasty, right? And we went, well, we didn't think anything of it. We went, we ate, we had nice, we were walking around, and we came back. He probably was about 2/3 of the way done with it now. But it looked very different, right? But if I look at that and he just said, all right, this is beautiful. This is definitely going to be what I want it to be. Here, you want to buy it? Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to buy it because it's not complete. And so we can't send people out that we have not worked to refine as if they're complete. And there's the danger. Yeah. Because the artist can see what it's going to be. When the artist looks at it, it doesn't look like an old nasty block of wood. It looks like a beautiful, complete piece. Right. When we look at those who we're sending out, we look like, oh man, look at the potential. Yeah. They could do this, they could do that, they could do all these things.
Even though they don't look like that.
Even though they don't look like it right now. And so we send them out, and they're the incomplete block of wood, and people are just like, yo, what did you send out? And you're like, what do you mean? We have to be careful when we live in as visionaries. We can't live in a place where the vision is greater than the actual place.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
We have to build the bridge and transition them from where they are now to where we
are. And I think the worst thing to do is send somebody out there premature.
Absolutely.
You know, have you ever tasted a premature fruit? It doesn't taste right. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think that's one of the biggest, like, one of the red flags that's going on now. Like, we've seen a lot of ministers, and I'm talking about ministers, Facebook ministers. I'm not, and that's another red flag that I want to go into. Oh, that's ministers that they don't even identify what church they come to. They don't have a covering. That's a big red flag. Covering. If you don't have a covering, a mantle,
a home church.
Hello,
a home church.
A home church. Yes,
home church.
Hello.
I think the biggest issue that we're having now is this term has been coined church hurt, right? That the new millennials are like talking about. And one of the biggest things that they always say, there's like thousands of videos on like church hurt. And when they're describing, they're like, they told me that I couldn't do this, or they told me that I couldn't speak. Like, and I'm like, that is not church hurt. That's discipling. They're discipling you.
Your feelings got hurt.
Feelings got hurt. Yeah.
But I think this whole phenomenon of giving everyone a little trophy, that type of mindset, has created this thing of like, I'm in Christ. I have the Holy Spirit just like you do. So you don't have to teach me. So if we don't send, I think a lot of times pastors feel pressured to send them out beforehand before they leave their church and just go out on their own and launch into the deep on their own. And we have a lot of that. We see a lot of ministers and pastors starting, and you're like, oh, who'd you start off with? Oh, no, yo me fui because mi pastor no quería, me estaba dividiendo mi llamado. And it's like, was he really? Or
was he clipping my wings, right?
Yeah, or was he just telling you, just hold on off a little bit more, you know?
I think that's something that's, I don't want to say unique to this generation, but we see it a lot more.
Yeah.
Because now with YouTube, Facebook, with everything that's going on in social media, it's so much easier to learn things, and we think we can learn things faster on our own, and we don't have to listen to no one else.
Yeah. I think it has happened. It's more prevalent now.
Yes, there we go.
It's more prevalent now because, and I'm just being honest, we come from New Jersey. In Newark, New Jersey, there's blocks you can go to. There's 8 doors on the block. 7 of them are churches, and 1's a corner store. Right? Because that corner store gets money when everybody leaves service. Like, that's what it is. And really, when you look at it, it's literally 20 members in each church, and you're like, really, guys? And if you visited each one, you would know there used to be one church years ago. They just split because somebody didn't like one thing the pastor said from the altar. And I think one of the, if I could lay this on the church, I think what we haven't done as a church, we haven't built strong enough community with all of the tools created to develop these ministers, to where we're not just saying, yeah, sit down, you can't talk, where it's more like, we're going to put you through this training, and you're going to learn what it means to effectively preach. You're going to also learn what it means to manage your family through it. Because, yes, it's one thing to be, right. It's one thing, that's what I'm trying to do, is one thing to be a minister that is 21 years old, you just started in ministry, and you could go anywhere in the country. And it's another thing to be 31 years old, you're married, you have 2 kids with 1 on the way, and it's month number, like it's week number 38, and your wife could possibly give birth, and you still out trying to go and preach in, Canada or wherever. I got a calling. Yeah, your calling's at your first ministry. So take care. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, understand what that is. I think if we really develop those things and worked in unison with other ministers, because that's the other thing. Kids got to see, like, you can't just, it's you and the pastor. You feel like you're the second best preacher on the planet because it's you and the pastor in your church. You go somewhere else, people preach the house down. Get around other ministers. Develop your style. Understand what that is.
But I think that there's such a spirit of competition.
Another red flag.
Another
red flag.
Another flag
There's
on the play.
such a spirit of competition of who knows who are you affiliated with, or like, we can't get together for a mentorship because you're going to steal my notes. First of all, your notes are stolen.
You stole your notes from the Holy Spirit. So let's talk about it.
I also have a Bible.
Yeah, we got the Bible.
I study too.
Reina Valera.
We got the same book. We study the same book.
Yeah.
Una pregunta. ¿Qué hay de cierto en que Dios me llamó al ministerio completo?
Oh my gosh.
Y pues trabajo en una ferretería y tengo que dejar este trabajo. Dios me llamó al ministerio completo.
Oh my God.
You got to be very careful when you say that, man.
So I'm gonna speak from experience, because for many, many years I was very against it, and I preached very heavily against it, where I was very well known in the North Jersey for being, la pastora que mandaba a los jóvenes a trabajar. Like, like that was my thing of like, God didn't, he didn't call you for full-time ministry. If he called you for full-time ministry, why are you still living off of your mom's basement?
Hello.
Like, you're trying to get married. I think that there are people that God does call for full-time ministry. And that is very evident in the fact of whether it's in fullness or in lack, their needs are still being met. And what do I mean by that? I was working for the courthouse, and I worked for the government for 5 years when the Lord literally told me, there's going to come a season where you're full-time pastoring so that you can help the church grow. And I'm like, I'm against it. Why are you going to call me? Why can't you call him? And the Lord is like, nope. And at the time, Pastor Thomas and I were pastoring, 5 or 6 years? Mm-hmm. And we were still paying the church rent from our salaries. Like, we were paying our rent plus another $1,500 for the church rent. And I'm like, Lord, how are you going to call me for full time? The church can't even pay its own rent. Like, how are you going to cover? And the Lord just kept speaking into that, to us. And I'm like, okay, Lord, you got to find a way. And sure enough, there was a way that it was met where one of the members from our church works for Robert Wood Johnson, and every one of his tithes, he asked us, he was like, hey, do you know if we're a public charity? And we found out that Pastor Thomas and I, when we started the church, we made a very small error of, instead of putting it as just a church, we put it as a church, but also a public charity. So it gave us special privileges for bigger donations. And he's like, our church qualifies for this program that my job has, that every time I tithe, we get 5 times the amount from Robert Wood Johnson. And I'm like, okay. That first year, Robert Wood Johnson cut us a $45,000 check.
Wow.
And the Lord there was like, this is what I'm doing. And then we found out.
Mind you, she stepped out. She was like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, we found out all this stuff was going on.
Right. So before that.
Quiere decir que si ella no escucha la voz de Dios, no hubiesen encontrado esa oportunidad.
Eso.
Yeah. No, this was before that. God had already spoken to me, and I was like, wow. I'm very stubborn. Dios me habló como 8 veces. A la última, Dios me dijo, yo no te lo voy a decir más. And I told the Lord, okay, if you can, because I knew the church wasn't going to be able to now cover my salary. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a pay cut, but at least with the same amount that we were giving to the church for all those years, que me den esa cantidad. And the church board came back to us, and they're like, now we have this income, and this is what we're going to give you. And it was exactly the same amount that we were giving back for years. Wow. And the Lord was like, I'm going to give you a sign that no matter what happens, your salary will always be there because I've called you for this. Amen. And even till now, I left January 2020, and I remember March 13th, right? March 13th.
Pandemia.
March 15th, the pandemic started. But March 13th, I hear the Lord tell me, take your son out of daycare. Don't bring him back. Just like that.
It was a Friday.
It was a Friday. And I tell the school, like, he's not coming back to school. Monday morning, we get the thing that the pandemic had started and had shut down all the schools. So that literally me obeying the voice of God, but also having those signs there that preceded before I just stepped out into the nothingness really allowed me to see that God does call certain people for full-time ministry, but you're more busy than what you are just being home, like binging Netflix.
Yeah.
Because if you, and there's the big thing, like people, Dios me llamó al ministerio full time. Okay, está bien, pero, like
what are you doing?
They're waking up at 12 in the afternoon. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, if you're walking around in your underwear, like eating, like, Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Yes.
And then you have to preach on Friday and you start studying for your like 2 hours before. Nah, bro, you're not called to full-time ministry.
No,
right.
you're just lazy.
You walked into lazy ministries, which you
That's
did.
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right. And another red flag that I would love to speak about it, because once you're a minister and God calls you, and God backs you up, and you go through the process, you do get followers. You do get this. I don't want to say fame, but
Yeah.
you get popular.
It comes with it.
It comes with it, right? And I think one of the red flags that we're seeing of ministers that are suspicious, sus ministers, they use that platform for their own gain.
Oh, yeah. They use it for their financial gain.
Financial gain. And
Yeah,
I think,
like sow a seed for the
yes,
finishing of a word.
if a minister
Very
is always
anti-biblical.
talking about send me an offering, send me money, they put, it's their birthday, it's like, yo, send me a cash app, they put their cash app,
Yeah.
Information. I think it's all right if someone else does it for you.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. But when you do that yourself, you're reflecting this thirstiness.
Right.
I think it's,
You understand what I'm saying?
yeah, I can see a lot of ministers, and I know a lot of ministers who have done it, and to each their own, and I
Yes,
respect.
correct.
I respect their decision. Like that's on you. But at the same time, a lot of times there are some people that their heart, you have to always look at the heart intention, and their heart intention is to take advantage of people where they're like, oh man, there's people that literally believe that if they sow a seed on fertile ground, which they're calling that ministry fertile ground, that God is going to give them healing, that God is going to give them, liberation, a prophetic word, a blessing. Their husband is going to come, their car, and all of that is anti-biblical. I can challenge someone and I'll literally pay them $20 to like find me biblical support for that. But there is no biblical support for that if we sow something that the Lord will then be forced to give us something in return. There is.
I think
that is good.
The biggest danger that I've run into with people who are do stuff like that is that it's you begin to, first of all, I heard somebody say this, if I get blessed because I give you a seed, why don't you give me a seed? Like, why don't you, instead of you asking, give it? Because then clearly, if that's how it works, give all your money away and then God's gonna bless your ministry, right? And I think that's the big issue that we ask people to sow seed into fertile ground, which really is just our life. As a minister, and that's why on the other side of that, we talked about ministers being full-time and ministers saying, oh, I'm full-time ministry. Like, no. When God calls you full-time, he's going to meet all your needs so that you're not out here asking for seed to meet all this stuff. Again, that's not to say that you don't give people an opportunity to sow into what's being done. Yes. Because if your ministry is, hey, we're going over here, we're going to be building this house, we're going to be, like our church, we do Thanksgiving in a box, right? And when we do Thanksgiving in a box, we give, or a bag now, but we give a full Thanksgiving meal to people in our community in Passaic County, New Jersey. And literally it is everything from turkey all the way down to the seasonings. We got adobo, we got beans, we got rice,
Sacks
we got potatoes, everything,
turkeys,
right? So like if you weren't going to have a Thanksgiving meal, you're going to have one now. And when we gave 100 bags away this last year in 16 minutes? Like that, gone. So when we tell people, hey, sow seed, why am I so, it's not just like, hey, sow seed so we can go take vacation. Sow seed because there are people in Passaic County, which is the number 4, and Patterson, which is next door, is the number 5, poorest, most impoverished cities in New Jersey. we got work that we're doing, right? Like sow the seed for that. But I think the more ministers start asking for more money and there's no fruit in their ministry, what's happening? There's a danger, bro.
Yeah, and one of the red flags too, and emphasizing on that, if a minister is asking for a donation for a missionary trip, for I'm gonna build a church, where's the proof? We need to see evidence of that. You know, we want to take videos. You know, I mean, that's why the social media is there.
Right.
Don't only ask for the money, but show. I mean, it's the red flags when they're just asking for money, and there's no proof of what they're asking the money for.
Right.
And I think that's when it goes. Come on, we work hard for our money.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean that there aren't ministers who don't do that. I know many ministers who like ask for donations, and you see the fruit of the evidence of like they're going to the Dominican Republic. I think Angel Castro had done one with Nati with the book bags, and you saw the evidence of that.
Yep.
I know Reverend Edgar J. Cruz used to do one too when he would go to Uruguay and Argentina. We would sow, but you see the evidence of what they're sowing. And what you're sowing into, and that makes you as a people and as a church be like, man, I'm sowing into actual fertile ground. But not all ground that you're sowing into is fertile.
No, y nosotros sabemos que parte del ministerio corre con dinero.
Oh, yeah.
Entendemos.
Eso es esencial. ¿Qué ustedes creen de los predicadores que se auto-invitan a las iglesias? Pastora, yo tengo una palabra para tu iglesia. El domingo.
Oh, I'm going to be around your area, you know, you need a preacher. I'm available.
Yeah, I'll be there at the 21st of next month.
Esto yo voy a decir porque y a veces yo soy una persona que dice, mira, yo quiero mirar al ministerio de Jesucristo para ver qué hizo él. I know that's like old school, antiquated, pero para mí
That's important.
Es
I'm
importante.
I'm with you.
Pero Cristo, he did go into synagogues and preach, and that was their culture. Pero la mayoría de su ministerio fue fuera la mayoría de su ministerio fue fuera de la sinagoga, fuera de la iglesia, por ejemplo, fuera de las ciudades. He would preach and people would come. Watch this, because he was meeting needs.
Yes.
Not because he was like, hey, I need to come to your church. So here's the thing. If that's you as a minister, this is what I would say. Number one, this time in ministry is very different, because that was an old school way of doing things, right? If you wanted to get media out about what you did, you would create CDs or tapes and send them to churches so that people would hear what you had to say. And they'd be like, okay, he's got a good word, bring her, right? But now, with the advent of social media, with the advent of TikTok, with the advent of YouTube, Vimeo, there's so much out there, especially now with the pandemic. Let me tell you something. You, from your living room, can preach a message. If you are really that adamant about a word that you have, put it online. Preach it. Preach it every day. Right? This is what these guys did. They dumped content. Eric Thomas is one of the most famous motivational speakers out there. And he talks about it. He's like, here's what I did that was different than everyone else. Everyone else, it took 2 to 4 weeks for you to order their content. You know what I did? I gave it away free. These ministers want to be paid for their preaching. Don't worry about being paid for your preaching. Put them, if you're full-time, right? Put a message up every day. You full-time? Prepare a message, put it up, preach it every single day. You do that for 30 days, I guarantee you, somebody's going to be like, yo, man, especially if you're good, yo, man, I want you to come to my church.
Yeah.
But then make sure that your character is lined. Don't get up there and be reckless.
Yo sé que I'm kind of like entre medio. Te lo explico por qué. Porque tengo muchos amigos que crecí con ellos en el evangelio, que son ministros, y que a veces nos llaman y nos dicen, hey, yo voy a estar en el área. Eso es algo totalmente diferente.
Eso es diferente porque hay un vínculo de
But
amistad.
Hay un vínculo de amistad.
Amistad.
Yo creo que si confiamos en el ministro y sabemos quién es y tenemos una amistad, no hay ningún problema en eso, porque yo creo que es diferente entre amistades y ministro porque nos conocemos. Pero si no nos conocemos es como que it's a sticky situation.
Yeah, because I remember before when we had our church, and everybody knew that we would do a lot of campañas and stuff like that, especially from outside of the country. You had to see my messages. Oh, I'm gonna be over there this week. Can I preach in your church? And I think one of the reasons why is because they have this way of thinking that if they come here and they preach, they're gonna get a nice offering. And I mean, come on, $100 over there in Colombia or in Dominican Republic, that's a lot of money.
It is,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know, so they force themselves to be invited, and that's a red flag. I mean, and also one of the biggest red flags that I could and I would love to elaborate is motive. Why are you in ministry?
Yep.
Yeah. That's the biggest
Wow.
motive.
Why are
That's
you
good.
why are you thinking about doing ministry?
I think that a real minister doesn't really want the weight. Like, let's be honest, you have to be crazy. Like, we're pastors, but you have to be like insane to be like not really called to be a pastor and to really want to deal with
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
be pastors. Like,
Yeah.
pastoring is not just the Michael Todd end of it. Pastoring is also getting down and dirty and like Jesus leaving the 99 to go after the one and getting dirty and getting them cleaned up. That's
And I think that what a lot of people have in mind is that they're gonna get the nice car, they're gonna have a salary, they're gonna have a nice platform,
Nice suit.
nice suit.
Yeah,
But what about
Red
when
bottoms.
you go through stories like us, where we started in our living room and we paid the church's rent for 5 years?
We were just looking at a
Because they don't hear this story, they just hear the
Yeah.
the TD Jake
But
story,
But listen, but they love
John Osteen
TD
story, you know.
But,
I mean,
now-
TD Jakes in the
But now,
beginning
correct,
But-
but not in the beginning,
TD
but now.
Listen, TD Jakes
had holes in his shoes.
You gotta hear his story.
Yes.
But he had
Yeah.
holes. He was talking about, and if you haven't, I mean, I know we plugging other stuff, but if you haven't heard the conversation between him and
Stephen Furtick.
Stephen Furtick on not his first book, but for SOAR. If you haven't heard that, it's an hour and 44 minutes. He talks about, he was like, I almost quit. He was like, I almost quit ministry.
Yeah.
Like because of all of the press that was coming down on him. They talked bad about him in the press, everything. And it was, I mean, all that stuff came down. He was like, I almost quit. Like, I almost quit. And so you have to understand, like, ministry is not simple. Like understanding that because as a pastor, you cover people and you work with people. Like, you have to get people whose
Yes.
Yeah.
attitudes, personalities are so different to work together to help build something that will, like, and it's not getting up there and preaching on Sunday, because that's the smallest part of what you do, let alone be an evangelist. Then you got to go and preach in other people's churches and be held accountable for the word that you bring. Like, don't go up in some church and bring the wrong thing. If I could say this to anybody who is like starting in ministry or wanting, first of all, here's where the big problem comes. We talk about people being like just going and not like, if you really think you want ministry, work a job first. Like, I hate to say it like that, but work a job first. Jesus did. He was a carpenter. Okay, I got it. Work a job first, because sometimes you feel, I keep doing it, sometimes you feel as though you're called to ministry because you want to help people and serve people, and that's great. But it may be that the people you're called to help and serve, it's not from a pulpit. It might be that you're called to be somebody very strong and like very good in your community. You could have a job, you could work in corporate America and be a leader in your corporate environment.
Nice.
And that in reality will do a lot more, is much more of what the church is called to do than just standing up and preaching.
Right.
Because those people can get into places that a preacher who is only a preacher can't get into.
Nice.
Exacto. Yo tengo el testimonio de que además de ser pastor, yo soy consejero clínico. Y lo digo para la gloria de Dios. Y yo me he encontrado ministrándole a personas que tienen pensamientos suicidas, a jovencitas que quieren irse de la casa, a jóvenes que tienen su orientación sexual en cuestionamiento. O sea que la ejecución de un ministerio no necesariamente se traduce detrás del altar. Estoy de acuerdo contigo. Ministerio no solamente se traduce detrás del altar, se puede hacer en otras plataformas, en tu profesión, en la escuela, en la universidad, en el trabajo. Yo tengo dos cosas que decir para ustedes dos. Me gustaría que elaboren en ellas. Número uno, ¿puede un predicador exigir una ofrenda, un salario, que para invitarlo esa es su tarifa? Esto es lo que yo cobro.
Red flag, red
Y la
flag.
iglesia tiene que adaptarse a esa tarifa, número uno. Y número dos, ¿ustedes creen que el ministerio evangelístico se ha prostituido? Porque lo que nosotros sabemos hoy del ministerio evangelístico es, ok, el lunes estoy en la iglesia del pastor Ramson, luego estoy en la iglesia del pastor Fidel, luego estoy en la iglesia del pastor Misael, luego voy a la iglesia que está allá. O sea que el ministerio evangelístico solamente se mira desde la perspectiva de visitar diferentes plataformas, diferentes altares, diferentes iglesias. Elaboren en eso.
Wow. La pusiste heavy.
Yo soy una persona que, y la primera cuestión es bien difícil. Yo digo por qué. En las iglesias, las iglesias americanas y las más grandes es diferente. Puede ir ahí a predicar y la semilla que ellos van a sembrar en su vida is different. Like you would think that if you go to this church and it's got 5,000 members, the seed that they sow into you or whatever they bless you with for your ministry, it's going to match the size of the church. That's not always true. Just to lay that out there.
Yes.
And number two, you would think that if you go to a smaller church, that church is going to match. That's not always true. And the pastor that I went to Bible school with, God in heaven, all right, I'm going to fold my hands. The pastor that I went to his Bible school, and one of the things that he told me when he first started preaching, he would go to churches. He was in South Africa. He would go to churches, and they would just like, here's some food.
Wow.
Yeah.
He came to America, and churches like in these rural areas were like, thank you so much for coming. Here's some food for the week. And he's like, food for the week? Like my gas tank. Like I've got to, and so we do a lot of, I want to believe God for what God is going to do. Yo voy a creer en Dios para lo que Él va a hacer en mi vida. Pero también yo tengo que decir que lo que yo voy a traer a tu iglesia, no es que esto merece algo, but I have to protect. If I'm going to minister, we're like, meet me here, right? Meet me at this place. Especially if I'm going to a church that does 10,000, I'm not going to, if they give me here's 200, I know. Y'all not out here. And again, I'm not saying anything, right? Again, it is what it is. I'm not going to run up in your office and be like, Pastor, stop playing, fix this, like add 3 more zeros. Stop. Like, I'm not doing that, right?
I think a lot of ministers have felt forced to do that because they've gone through so many bad experiences.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of them, I grew up in a very Pentecostal, like super rajatabla, like church. So I remember going with my pastor who was full-time ministry and his wife was working and they had 3 kids. Y a veces después de predicar y que la gloria de Dios bajaba, palabra profética, like an on-time word, él salía con empanadillas y soda.
No, mira,
y viajando 4 horas con niños sin gasolina. So, yo creo que muchos ministros se han visto en esa situación y ellos dicen, mira, para yo no pasar un mal rato, para yo no pasar eso, porque a veces uno viaja 4 horas y no te quieren ni pagar ni un hotel.
Ni la gasolina ni el peaje.
Y después que tú le ministras a la gente, uno se cansa, el cuerpo se cansa, para después tener que viajar con niños y con un esposo para atrás 4 horas.
Well, I think it's also a big distinction, like, because you were saying, how much do you give them? It's a big decision, like, hey, can at least cover me, or like asking for like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to go preach at your conference.
Right, but this is where we run into a difference. When you look at, and I talk about this because I come from the marketplace, I working in
you're a business banker.
I'm a business banker, so I understand like value, right? People would get frustrated, like, I can't believe that we had to give that person this amount of money or what have you, but and still you'll go and you'll pay an exorbitant gas price to put gas in your car. Well, let's talk about the value that you get for that gas. Is that gas giving you salvation for your life? Is that gas giving you something that you could take and transform your marriage? Is that gas giving you something that you could take?
I don't know.
Is it right? Is that gas? No, it's not. All right. So if you're willing to drop $80 in the tank for that, why would you be frustrated if the minister is saying, I'm bringing this value, please bless me? I can't believe he would ask for that much. You don't say that for the exorbitant gas prices. You don't say that when they just shut down the whole avocado operation and now they was threatening to charge $10 an avocado.
That's right.
You was still going to get your avocado to have with your right. Like you was. So when we look at it from a value-given perspective, I can't be frustrated when a minister says, hey, listen, yo vengo con esto, yo vengo con esto, yo vengo con esto.
Right, but I think also
that's understandable.
The minister has to back up their credentials for what they want.
But I mean, if you have to fill out an application because you want to invite a preacher, and he's saying, okay, I'm going to go with a group of 10 people, and they make exaggerated demands.
Right. I think if you're...
That's totally different.
I think that if you're... I think there's levels to it. If you're a local preacher and you're saying, I need 3 hotel rooms. You better get out of here.
Yeah.
Like,
I heard of a preacher who was like, I want a bowl with only green M&Ms. They
Yeah.
don't come like that. I know. Could you take out all the other M&Ms from
Yeah.
the pack and give me a
No,
bowl?
I'm not doing
I
that.
I need you to go and get saved again. That's what you need to do.
But I think that you also have,
Are
but
you
you also,
serious?
yeah, there are,
There are
and there are
stories, man. Oh,
local
God.
ministers like that. But I think if I think also it has to be twofold. It has to be the church also as the body has to take a responsibility, and pastors have to take the responsibility of knowing that if your minister travels more than an hour and a half, they need a hotel room.
Yep.
Yeah, and just for the ministers that are going traveling around, and they do, because I know there's churches that do bless the preachers. Don't flaunt it on Facebook. Don't flaunt it on Instagram, because you're giving it. And this is where we go. Like these ministers, these new young ministers that are coming up, that's what they're seeing,
Right.
and that's their motive now.
Right.
They say, "Wow,
Aviones, aeropuertos.
wow." So I just got to
hoteles.
become an evangelist so I could go to Colombia, to Dominican Republic. They're gonna pay my flights. And on top of that, they're gonna give me a gold watch.
Right. And there's been times where Thomas and I have gone to preach where the minister has been there ready, the pastor ready and willing, because their heart is
Yes.
to bless us, and the Holy Spirit be like, don't take that offering. You better sow it back. Are you willing to do that as a minister?
Yeah.
Are you willing to believe that God is going to meet your need exceedingly and abundantly and above and beyond?
Yep.
When he tells you, there's going to be very few times, but there are going to be times when the Lord tells you, people have been sowing, you got to sow back.
Yeah.
Yo pienso que tiene que existir un
balance.
un balance.
Yeah.
¿Entiendes? Hay iglesias, y esto lo digo sin miedo a la verdad, sin filtro. Hay iglesias que son muy miserables.
Sí. El
Hay
espíritu,
igles-
yeah.
Sí, no, hay pastores que son tacaños.
Yeah.
Hay pastores que te ven, tú tienes una palabra, tú tienes arrastre, te invitan, te suben en un afiche, y por el simple hecho de que tú tienes un arrastre, la iglesia ese día se le llena. Oye, ese día él, obviamente no hay un servicio que no exija ofrendas. Ese día se colectó una ofrenda exuberante. Oye, ahí la gente se entregó porque la gente fue motivada. Número 1, por el Espíritu Santo. Señores, vamos a ser sinceros.
sí,
y por
sí,
la
sí.
palabra que él tiene.
Claro.
No, de verdad.
¿Entiendes? Él tiene una palabra atractiva, que gusta,
Yes.
bíblica. El hombre sabe predicar. Entonces, se termina el servicio, $75.
Yeah.
Y se recolectó $5,000. Yo creo que eso es una falta
De
de
respeto,
respeto.
claro.
Y es un pecado.
Pero
es
piensa,
un pecado.
Yes.
ellos son como Faraón, quien tenía la bendición operando en su nación, operando en su reino, right? Los judíos estaban ahí. They had the best land. They were in Goshen. Everything was growing. Había prosperidad. Y de un tiempo dijo, están prosperando. Y tomaron avantaje de la bendición que estaba en su tierra y lo puso en esclavitud.
Correcto.
And that's what they do with these preachers. They, tú tienes una unción y cuando predica mucha gente viene, ven aquí, ven. They invite them in, suelta la bendición y de ahí they put them in, like, it's
But
like putting them in
that you're
slavery.
basically like pimping them out.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly it.
Absolutely.
Because what does a pimp do? You do all the work, and then they take the majority
They
of
take
the
yeah,
cut.
the
They're
big
like, here,
cut.
$75.
Yeah.
Go wash up. You know, like.
But these are, pero estos son, and that's a red flag. That's a red flag for pastors
Yes.
that do not have a heart for ministry.
Yes.
Because if you truly love people, you
Man.
love everyone that comes in your doors.
Yeah,
Even
absolutely.
the ministers that are bringing the word. There was a pastor that I knew. He said, I put it this way. When I contacted him, he said, we'd love to have you come. He said, okay. What do you want? Don't give me anything. Let me take the offering. He's like, because then I will reveal your heart. Because if you were saying, come on in and preach, what do you want? And you won't let me take the offering.
Yeah.
One of two issues. Either number one, you're not that trustworthy of people, and that's fine. Or number two, you know what I'm bringing to the table.
You
and
know it's gonna be a
and
heavy
you know it's
offering.
going to be massive, and you're excited because it's going to bless your church, but you're going to short me on the other side.
Yeah.
Could you let somebody take up an offering in your
Man.
church and not touch it, knowing that your church not going to get revenue off of that?
Right.
It's different.
That's good.
It's different.
Man, you know what it is? Every time there's money involved,
It's a sticky
it's a
situation.
situation.
bad.
Because
It's
I
rough.
think it's in both ends. Like, you know, we're a relatively small church, and every time ministers come, always very surprised. They're like, wow, you guys bless so well. But it's
do.
because number one, we've been blessed, but at the same time, we have a very big system of honor that we teach our people.
Yeah.
That like a person that comes here, a lot of times we don't know their financial situation. The same way that they poured their best oil to you, we got to pour
Yeah.
back
Pour
into
it back.
them
Yeah.
and make sure that they're eating. You know, we take them out to eat afterwards and stuff like that.
Mi última pregunta es esta. I know we gotta go.
Yeah.
Tengo la
Yeah.
intención
Listen,
ya.
sigue. We'll cut it into 2 podcasts. Part 1, part 2.
La ofrenda del predicador se
Otra vez
debe
con
de
dinero.
dar de acuerdo a su mensaje.
Yikes.
Ooh.
So you just so in other words, you're buying the message.
No.
No. What he's saying is,
Oh,
no.
if-
El valor que soltaste.
No.
Do we like
Vamos a poner, hay
¿qué?
predicadores, señores, vamos a decir la verdad, hay predicadores que tienen fama, que tienen renombre,
Okay.
Yeah.
que llenan los lugares y cuando tú vas a escucharlo, su
Ok.
nombre es más grande que el
Que la
mensaje
palabra-
que trajeron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, ese día, por alguna razón, ese mensaje no fue tan efectivo, no fue tan atractivo. El mensaje no fue bueno.
Pero
Entonces, ese día no estamos acostumbrados a escucharte así, you know.
Pero,
Aquí está.
Pero
200
para,
pesos.
para mí yo vengo
You took a few zeros out.
I come from the business world, man, and it's the whatever you're giving people really is based on what you believe you're gonna get, what you believe you're gonna receive as well, right?
Like the value, you mean?
No, not the value. So let's say if you're, TD, like for example, people had a fit. Joel Osteen was charged, like Joel Osteen knew he was getting $100,000 for his nights with Joel Osteen, but Joel Osteen was doing it in, let's call it the Prudential Center in Newark, or let's call it Madison Square Garden, and he was bringing people in, and people were paying $50, $100, $200 a seat, depending upon where it is. So Madison Square Garden was taking $250,000. Like all of that money was coming in. And even if he brought a lackluster message, that $100,000, you can say whatever you want to say about him and that $100,000, but all those people were paying all that money to get in, and it was based on the fact it was Joel Osteen. So if whether the message was lackluster or not, I don't think my offering is based on what I receive from the person. I shouldn't just be like, you know what, hold on, give me the check, hold on. Espérate, tesorero, da un momentito, déjame cambiar el cheque aquí en la parte de atrás. No, I think what it is honramos el Espíritu Santo que está adentro de esa persona, right? Honramos la persona, and we do like in faith, God bless you, right? But I don't think it's going to be, for me, personalmente, I don't think I should be, oh, you know what?
Yes. Yeah.
Esa palabra
Yeah.
profética
Yeah.
fue.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, because we're talking about how, let's say the preacher did come and he preached the message, and it wasn't to what we expected, and we were like, oh no, we're gonna cut the offering because whatever. But what if that's what God wanted to speak to the church that day? What if instead of a message that encouraged people, God was like, you know what, I need you to do this, I need you to preach this? Are we gonna penalize the guy for listening to what God said to do?
Right. I think we also need to do a better vetting process of our
Absolutely.
preachers, because a lot of times it's so, and I've seen this so many times where you see a 60-second clip on Instagram, you're like, tipo está poderoso. And I've gone to see them and it's like,
There's a reason why there's only 60 seconds.
But
You
it's
gotta
just like-
just these instant preachers.
Yeah.
that's
out
the
here, bro.
only thing. They have sound bites.
sound bites, yeah.
And sound bites don't equate someone who knows how to expound the word. Sound bites are just like one-liners.
Man, we could keep on going, and I just want to give the last words.
Yeah.
Ronald.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
We've learned a lot, and I think it's been a blessing to the community.
Yes, Pastor Misael.
Yo pienso que cada ministro que nos está escuchando y también para nosotros, tú sabes, nosotros hemos comenzado en un camino de integridad, de honradez, pero puede ser que un espíritu de sospecha nos visite. Y esto yo lo tomo como una alerta, como una alarma para yo cuidar mi integridad y los valores correspondientes a mi ministerio y a mi santidad. A los que están allá afuera, que nos están mirando, amen a Dios y que el motor no sea el dinero, que el motor sea edificar al pueblo de Cristo y traer almas al Evangelio de Jesucristo. Hay muchas personas viviendo en pecado, viviendo en una vida inmoral y necesitan escuchar la luz que hay sobre ti y la unción que hay sobre ti. Yo pienso que este ha sido una intervención muy beneficiosa y espero de que todo el mundo le saque provecho.
Oh, Pastor Thomas.
No matter what you do as ministers, always ask. Ministry is serving. Ministry is service. So when you go, if you are a minister, first and foremost, everything that you do comes from a place of serving.
Yeah.
So when you talk to God, Lord, am I called to ministry? Be ready to serve people, right? In whatever capacity He sends you, because He might say, go be an auto mechanic, and you serve those people.
Yeah.
But if He calls you to ministry, every time you prepare a message, everything you do, let it be with the fact of, I'm serving people. love God, love people.
Yeah.
You stay there, you'll be successful.
That's awesome. That's good. Pastora.
Yeah, I think I would say the same thing. I think that, you know, I would say to the young up and coming preachers, you know, ministry can be very, very beautiful, but, you know, sometimes there can be heartaches that are involved. And develop your character before you develop your preaching style, because your character is going to keep you sustained when everything else, you know, goes haywire. Especially, you know, in ministry, it can get very crazy and nasty. And, you know, make sure that your character is firm and cemented, and find a group that you can glean off of always, so that you guys keep each other accountable. Accountability in the kingdom can take you very, very far, and it can take you into a place of like always checking your heart, because we have to check our hearts. The higher we go, a lot of times the more pride continues to knock on our doors, and the enemy will try to take a foothold. So that would be my advice to like the young ministers, that you guys hear this and that you're not taken aback, but that you use this to propel yourselves to the next level.
That's good. And for every person who desires ministry, for every person who's in ministry, if you want to prevent these red flags, read the red letters in the gospel. Man, Jesus Christ is our example to go and seek his examples. And in those red letters, you'll man, I recommend you to read those red letters. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Absolutely. The red letters are what Jesus said. Amen. So for the Verdad Sin Filtro podcast, until next time, thank you guys. Let's go.
Yes, sir.